Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. You're watching Up the Reds and are just now tuning in to our post-match analysis of our FA Cup third-round fixture between the Reds and Shrewsbury Town FC. Talk about a tale of two matches, one on paper versus one we saw ourselves. We're going to dive into the stats and general thoughts in this episode. Later on, we'll follow up with a separate video on our player ratings and man of the match. I appreciate you all stopping by, and we'll just kind of dive right in initially. I did want to take a quick look here at the stats because those just fully came out. So, again, it is truly a tale of on paper versus had you watched in person in the United States. That was on ESPN Plus, and I don't know what it would have been. Maybe Sky Sports in the UK. Looking at it stats-wise, 19 shots for Liverpool versus 4 for is it Shrewsbury or Shrewsbury? FIFA would have me believe it's Shrewsbury, but I mean, if you actually know the correct pronunciation, let me know down in the comments. I know they're kind of like, a lot of times they go by the Shrews, but again, there's not really a shrew on the logo, it's a lion. So just curious, let me know. That way I can stop saying it wrong. I don't know how many more times we're going to run into them. I think the stats and information that I have scrolling down on the bottom of the screen here was that I think we beat them in 96 and then in the 2019-2020 FA Cup as well. So I don't think it's something I'm going to run into a lot. But again, for the pure sake of education, it would be nice to know how to pronounce it. So anyway, 19 shots for Liverpool, 4 for Shrewsbury. I'll just call it that. 6 on target for Liverpool. Obviously, you'll see that we had 4 goals in the game. And then 2 on target for Shrewsbury with 1 scored in the game. 84% possession to Liverpool, 16% to Shrewsbury. I don't know that it felt like that as we watched the game. In all honesty, Anfield was pretty quiet up until about the 70th minute or so when Bobby Firmino scored that kind of classy backheel in and around that time. So it seemed like everybody was a little bit on edge, and I don't think we were all supremely confident in what we were seeing on the field. So I don't really want this stats sections to convince somebody that they were just bowled over, because I guess if you just look at the score 4-1, you would think that we did to Swindon what Man City did to them. So let me see here. So passes, actually what we did to Shrewsbury would be like what Man City did to Swindon. In terms of passes, 857 for Liverpool versus 166, 89% passing accuracy, which is pretty good for the Reds, and then 57% for Shrewsbury. 6 fouls versus 12 for Shrewsbury committed, and let's see, 6 corners here versus 2. So all in all, I mean, again, the stats and the score would lead you to believe that this was a match that heavily favored Liverpool. Though, in a word, I would actually kind of describe the general tone of the match to be somewhat lethargic. I think our intensity was down quite a bit. Obviously we want to be conscientious of kind of the COVID situation here that all teams have had or may have in the future. And I know that LFC, we were kind of patchworking it today. We had a number of players that were coming back. We didn't know until today whether certain players would be out of isolation. I think we were actually expecting Peter on the touchline and not Jurgen, but he managed to make it through his isolation period. It does not appear as though Allison did, or at the very least, we felt like Kelleher would be the better fit for this game. So with that, let's go actually into the lineups here, and I'll just pop it up on the screen, and we can kind of go down who started the game for the Reds. So we had Kelleher back in goal. Connor Bradley was back along with Konate, Van Dijk, and Robertson. So all in all, a pretty strong defensive group. Obviously, you would normally think Nico Williams to slot in there. I don't know in terms of his kind of injury troubles, or if he was obviously maybe exposed to something. We're getting kind of conflicting information right now as to whether some of those PCR confirmations, which were required after a suspected positive case, we're getting some word back that some of those might have been false positives, whereas others, may have in fact been positive. So it kind of looked like it was a much more pronounced issue at the club, which, is what caused us to have to postpone the game with Arsenal. But now that some information's coming through, and again, I'll have to check later, so take it with a grain of salt. Now that some issues coming through with the false positive, God help us. as it relates to the Arsenal fan base, because they were already bitching and lacking complete and total compassion when they thought that that everybody was that everybody was potentially exposed. So now that they're false positives, they're definitely probably going to throw this on the club. A lot of the individuals over at AFTV were even and basically trying to suggest that Liverpool were exploiting the situation, which I don't think is the case. So let me drop that scoreboard down here so you can get a good look at that. Dixon Bonner in the midfield with Fabinho, and then obviously Tyler Morton on the outside, and then we had Cade Gordon, Voltman, and Curtis Jones up top. I'm going to be 100% honest. I didn't know a lot about Voltman coming in. Dixon Bonner I knew nothing about. I don't know that I can say much more about him in this game after having watched him, but we'll just see. Udoh, Bowman, Ogbeta, Leahy, Davis, Vela, Bennett, Nurse, Eubanks, Landell, Pennington, and Morosi were in the starting lineup in a 3-5-2 formation for Shrewsbury. On our bench, we did have, I keep saying their name wrong, like I just know it's wrong, but Shrewsbury. I'm just going to keep saying the Shrews. But yeah, so on the bench, we had Roberto Firmino, we had Adrian, Takumi Minamino, Simicus, Matip, Isaac Mabaya, who I had not seen before, James Norris, who I had not seen, James Belagizi, and then I'm going to pull it up here because I know I'm going to butcher this, but it's probably Frauendorf, Melkamu Frauendorf, who did make an appearance in this game. So in terms of who actually subbed out during the game, we would later see Roberto Firmino, Takumi Minamino, Simicus, James Norris, and then Frauendorf. So they would make appearances in this game. For the Shrews bench, Aaron Pierre, Sam Cosgrove, Harry Burgoyne, Pike, Blossom, Catton, Joshua Daniels, Cade Craig, and Saiku Jene. Again, this is a team I don't know a super ton about. Coming into this match, I was actually under the impression that the Shrews were in the championship. And then was very quickly educated that they are, in fact, in League One. Not that that's supposed to be a negative, but obviously it's worth it taking into consideration that they're 15th place in League One and early on kind of caused us some issues. So, in going back to my notes here, and I'll drop this screen down. So, in going back to my notes here, I think that far too much respect was given early on in the game to a team that's suffering difficulties in League One. That's going to come across as being somewhat disrespectful of the opponent, saying, they're League One, we should have bowled over them. But this is Liverpool Football Club. We should have bowled over them. I understand that LFC are depleted, that we're recovering from some positive COVID cases, as well as some suspected, potentially false positives, again, just being heard. That's some rumor. But given the constant banter about club depth, some of the... and I don't know that FSG has come straight out and said, our depth is so amazing, we're not going to spend money. But I do think that there have been times in which Klopp has kind of represented that the squad depth was much better than it was. I think that was part and parcel to some of the annoyed and frustrated disagreements that we had as fans towards the club when we felt like we were light in center backs last year because we didn't replace Lovren, and then yet again you come into this one saying we didn't replace Genie. I think for a club that is suggesting that we have the depth to take on these various other competitions, that's if we were still in the race for the Premier League, which we could very well be, but we've also got Champions League, we've got the FA Cup, we've got Carabao, which we're still in. So we've got a lot of competitions, and, again, it now granted it took this scenario in order to kind of force us into kind of this piecemeal team, but I just felt like we looked lethargic for huge periods of the game, and I don't think the Shrews were bad on the day. I thought that, given their league, given their position within their league and their form, granted our form hasn't been great as of late either, but I felt like given that, they really gave us a game, and that's why I say that I don't feel like the stats really do their play any justice, and I think for the most part that aside from some lapses towards the tail end, that they can leave the stadium proud. The Shrews came out with a 3-5-2, which can be a very aggressive formation, but they appeared to use it kind of in more of a dialed-back, counterattacking, focus. But, I think Liverpool continues in that 4-3-3. We continue to try and use our width to create chances versus quick passing and driving at the center, because the 3-5-2 really does tend to require superb center backs. Just superb center backs that are covering either the long balls over the top or players driving at them. And I just don't know that we did drive at them directly as often as I would like. I do think that Cade Gordon got in there a few times. I thought he was very, very good on the day. And then obviously as our more experienced players got in, you saw kind of Bobby backing into that area. And this isn't just as it relates to the Shrews. I think Liverpool consistently, when playing against a 3-5-2 or when playing against teams that, have a tendency to kind of sit back with 9 men behind the ball, we do and have for many seasons now, to the frustration and chagrin of many fans, we do have a tendency to simply go wide, attempt to recycle, and then push it the other direction. We try crosses. Our crosses, both from Trent prior to this game as well as Robertson, have been a little lackluster as of late. Our set pieces have not been wonderful. And when your players, especially with the type of pressing we do, when your players are not on point, when their passing isn't crisp, when they're not winning some of their tackles, they leave us exposed to the counter. And I think with that first goal, I think that we kind of saw just a little bit of, I think that's where we kind of saw just a little bit of Bradley's inexperience in terms of him getting kind of caught out, him getting beat. And then, again, Konate was just in no man's land. Obviously, Van Dijk is coming across to try to cover for Konate a bit. There's 2 players there. He has to keep them in mind. And I don't know what Konate was doing. I mean, again, it looked from every camera angle I saw as though if he had been aggressive enough, he could have gotten something on the ball and put it out for a corner. Instead, it appeared as though he just slowed up, expecting Virgil to cover him or for Keller to sweep. And that's just not the type of play that we need from him. But obviously, in talking about him, I'll bring up some additional points. I'm going to go into a bit more detail kind of in the actual player ratings on each individual player as we kind of seek out their scores and man of the match. So that'll be in a different video. But what I will say is that I am going to move down through the players. I thought Kelleher, he's such a cavalier individual. He's got a cool, calm, and collected mentality that is very much indicative of Van Dijk. It really is. Van Dijk always has that, to where even when shit goes south and there's a bit of an error, he's kind of cool and calm about it. He doesn't overplay his kind of exasperation, and he's not just, he's not losing his shit. And I think Kelleher is very much the same. I'm very excited to see where his career takes him because of that. I think he's his reaction saves oftentimes are just top notch, and I think he's got a great head on his shoulders. So I think he did another good job for us today. Put in a great shift. As far as Konate, excuse me while I take a quick sip of the new LSC Muggy here. Excuse me. As far as Konate, I mean, his play is always to either end of the spectrum when I see him. I mean, he is Joe Gomez, for example. Joe Gomez, to me, tends to have huge periods where his focus lapses. And that has always been something I've seen with Gomez. If you wanted to beat Gomez, honestly, you almost always just had to try the overhead ball, because he just loses it. Just goes full Batman. Can't see it, doesn't know where the fuck it is. Loses it, and you can get around him fairly quickly. Konate is so athletic, and he can show such vision in terms of shutting down passes, stepping up higher, cutting off the searching ball. And I feel like he's just one of those players that can do something like that. So I feel like he has very bipolar performances. Again, as I said with the goal, I felt like he expected others. I don't know if that's something where, again, Van Dijk needs to be a little more communicative across the line in terms of, because he seems to have been less. Last season, he had his injury before that. He had no problem really calling people out, and you can see him yelling at Trent every once in a while. I don't know that I've seen that between Konate and with Matip. I feel like he just already has much more of an established relationship. I know he's not afraid to say anything to anybody, so I think there just needs to be that communication. But either way, I mean, I think Konate is going to be a truly good center back. Those bursts of pace, his athleticism, and everything. It's just I think sometimes he needs to work on, not shutting off and just very similar to Gomez, staying focused and putting in the full 90 minutes. Van Dijk, he was a bit casual and despondent today. He did his job. He did have a lazy back pass that really could have been gnarly for us, which was, something that we saw kind of towards the tail end of our actual championship winning season, we kind of started to see a few more mistakes, and we were, I don't know, are we going to stretch this out, because we tend to make things harder on ourselves. But his intensity so far has been a bit meh this season for me across all competitions. And when I say that, and I don't want this to be misconstrued, when I say that Van Dijk's intensity has been a bit meh, that's still saying he's insane, okay? Because he's still going to win 99.9% of what he's doing when his intensity is lower. It's just, like I said before, it felt like he was commanding his defense far more so before his injury, and ever since he's come back, he's just kind of been a bit off in terms of that intensity, maybe a bit softer on people. I don't know anything that's happening behind the scenes, so he may be doing that. He may be saying it. We're just not hearing it because the stadiums are full again and it's loud. It's just I'm not seeing it. But, all in all, he did his job. It's just not really a performance to remember against the mighty Shrews. Bradley, he was much better in the second half. I thought he, first half I thought he was far too easy to play against without support. He just couldn't contain Shrewsbury or the Shrews. But he did come into the game, I think. He found his way into it, got more comfortable. I just think he needs to work on his passing and his outlet balls. Those were all pretty poor. Even when he would make a good tackle or would position properly and get the ball back, it just needed a bit more quality on his pass. Morton, it's always been hard to tell with him for me, and my feelings about him are up in the air. I think that he works hard. I think he has very good positioning, and I think he has a fair footballing mind. It's just his passing, too, leaves something to be desired. I see him developing those skills for sure. But unlike a Gordon, for example, I don't think he'll see as much first-team action if it can be helped. So I'm not sure, what his future holds. I don't want to base that off of one game, but we did see him previously in this comp. And for me, it just kind of feels like he's somebody that's, once we have the coverage, is probably going to get a loan out and probably needs that for their development. So, again, not a negative. Robertson was super quiet today. With the red card a number of games back, which was uncharacteristic of him. He always does have some good attitude. It's just I don't think he ever really does. He doesn't tend to do things that are just idiotic, and that was just kind of a red in the head, emotional reaction from him. His poor crossing for much of this season as well as the tail end of last season. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was saying that it just seems as if there's something up there, like a confidence thing. But I feel like our whole left side has a cloud over it. It's kind of like where we as a team were defensively faltering once Van Dijk, was injured, Gomez was injured. It kind of felt like when we as a team were doing that, you saw the front three who were playing much deeper, which at the time was primarily Mane, Firmino, and Salah. You saw their productivity decrease. And while Salah could still make something work, that's when we first started to see the form of Mane and Firmino slip. And I think that there was a bit of a paranoia because they were tracking back defensively, that if they did play too far up, that if they were more offensively greedy, that it might lead to goals because we were leaky as hell at the time. Now we're still just as leaky, and at the same time, those players are still suffering from some of that. And there are a lot of, I'll have another video which kind of, I want to backtrack and kind of look at our Champions League season, as well as looking at when we won the Premier League, and kind of talk about what that might have done to the players, the injuries before and after, what that might have done to the players' mentality, and how it affects. Again, I understand that we always want to be moving forward. I see a lot of people in the chat always sliding players like Mane or Robertson, saying they're not good enough because they had one off season. And honestly, I've always felt like it's not that you can't go after players and say it's just not good enough. But at the same time, if your slogan has and always will be, you'll never walk alone, it's kind of shitty to just turn around and go, well, you've had, a bad season, bad run of games. We know your potential. If you've come in and you've never really done anything for the club, or you've never really produced, or it seems as though you're playing for yourself, and then that's understood. But I think in that respect, we got to figure out this left side, because whoever comes in, Robertson, sometimes Ox is over there kind of in the left mid role, and then you'll have, a Mane. It just kind of feels like there's a cloud on that side, which has made us, kind of force the Trent the Trent Salah side more often, which makes us extremely predictable. So that's something that we can do. I think it'll all get solved, but at the moment, I think Tsimikas came in and very quickly had a an assist, I believe, and I think he's actually our in-form attacking back at the moment. I think Robertson narrowly has the defensive advantage because I think he's a little bit better at defense than Tsimikas. But I will say that's one area of the pitch, aside from the quality on the crossing and stuff like that, that's one area of the pitch that I'm pretty optimistic about because I don't think that we've really had a good fight for a left back, left wing back position in a very, very long time. So I think that that's pretty exciting. Jones was in there today. He's always very composed. He's mature as all get out, I believe that most of his play was largely ineffective today, especially he was forced to sit deeper when Dixon Bonner kind of moved over to the left to get more advanced as well. I think great things are coming for Jones. He just seems to have the right attitude. He's got sand. He's got grit. And he reminds me of Trent kind of starting out. It's one of those things where even though Trent was very, very good, he had no real right to have some of the attitude and I'm not even going to say cockiness because he's such a calm, shy individual, but you could tell in his play somebody would bump up against him and he would just immediately kind of be back up in their face. And I feel like Jones kind of carries himself with that. So I mean, he seems to have the right attitude, and Trent has matured like I've never seen a player in such a small window of time, and I think Jones is doing the same. Firmino comes in, he gets classy and composed with a backheel goal. Probably fortunate positioning, but he was there, and it was fed into him by Fabinho, excuse me. And he did what he was called to do, and he needs to be a big player for us with AFCON. Obviously, I think most likely. I'm not sure who we're going to, run up in there, but I do think given the issues that we're having, we're probably going to have Firmino up top with Jota kind of playing left wing, and this next individual will definitely be in the mix, which is Taki Minamino. Now, I'm going to put this out there. This may not be a popular opinion, but I'm going to put this out there. This is an extremely busy month. AFCON's putting a lot of strain kind of on our front three in terms of how inventive it will be. And I'm not sure where Ox will play. Not sure of Origi's fitness. And still with January kind of going, we got to figure out is he staying, is he going, which I think he will stay at least until summer. But it feels like a now or never moment for me for Taki. And I really hate to be negative about a certain player. I just think he's bad. I really do. I think that when we saw him at RB, I think he came out, he surprised us. I think he caught attention. And I'm not saying that he's bad in training. I'm not saying that he's not a technically gifted player or something like that. I've just yet to see it. Every time he comes in, and people are going to say, oh, but he's scored goals and he's scored, sometimes minutes when he came in. I mean, these were on a plate. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, some of our players have really screwed the pooch on those on-the-plate types of goals, especially from like 4 feet away. So I'm not saying that he hasn't done that, but I mean every time he comes in, it's just his decision making is just poor, and some of that just has to do with maybe him not getting a hell of a lot of gameplay. But even when he went to Southampton on loan, there wasn't a lot doing there. So it feels like, and this is why it's not a negative. This is kind of a now or never opportunity for Taki in the sense that I feel like. And it's not like he's going to be some player that we just loan off tomorrow. It's just I don't know that he's going to be anything more than kind of that Shaqiri-esque player that kind of sits around for a bit, gets a couple starts, doesn't really do anything, and then eventually we sell him, and it's either for what we sold him for or quite a bit less. But he's just one that's disappointed me. I will say too that I was a bit let down by the Anfield atmosphere today. It was up until about 70 minutes. I was literally listening to the Shrews fans, chant, trying to get their players back into it. And it wasn't until Firmino got that goal that you kind of felt the pressure in the stadium release. Now, that's not necessarily a negative against the fans. I think that our form as of late has put people on edge, and I think that Liverpool in general and our play style and kind of the tiredness that you see, that unless we're winning games 5-0, which happen, unless we're winning those, it does feel like that there's always an opportunity for the other team to get back in it, and it's always not off of really great chances. It's just bungled around. So I think that I think everybody was stressed, and I don't think that when you come into a game, even if the team is kind of piecemeal from what you have, because a lot of people have to make that work nowadays and have done so. I'm going to be honest, I think we kind of, I felt like when we stepped into this that, yeah, there'd be a little bit of kind of a learning curve for the first 5-10 minutes, and then I thought we'd probably batter them. And I think that if somebody doesn't watch the game, or they don't watch commentary from the big media pundits, or come and watch one of these fan channels, then I think you're going to be led to believe that based off the stats, this is a really, really, really good game for Liverpool. But in reality, I think that this showed that there are a hell of a lot of cracks. There is a hell of a lot more work to be done. And I think that it shows that we really should be putting all of our effort into, not every bit, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I feel like we should put a great more emphasis on focusing on these FA Cup games, these Carabao, because again, if we don't do something to correct these issues, then it's not even just about the Premier League. It's about kind of getting slapped around in the next stages of Champions League, and that's something that we certainly don't want. But again, I'm not looking at this as negative. I don't want everybody to sit here and go, oh, he's just being a dick, and he's just hating on his team. It was actually good that I didn't do live. I'm going to start doing live soon. Again, I'm trying to find my feet here, and trying to figure out what everybody thinks of these videos, trying to get some comments. Obviously, you'll see that the subscribe, which is hilarious, because the one site that I tried to use to actually get the subscribers to actually post up, that they have a limit, or a minimum, excuse me, and I don't beat the minimum, because apparently your two friends, wife, and parents don't really get you over the number to show the subscribers. So if you want to show some love, I would greatly appreciate it. I definitely want this to be everybody's channel. I want this to be more of a conversation and discussion. I'll cover news from time to time, but again, with many of these things, I'm no expert. I'm seeing a lot of this transfer stuff come through, and I just kind of poo-poo it away. So I definitely want this to be a fun group, and a fun channel. And so I will start going live soon when I kind of, when my balls drop and I get a little bit, and I get a little bit more confidence in kind of talking about it, because again, for the past, what is it now? For the past, for the past 15 years, I've pretty much just been ranting like a lunatic to my wife every single time Liverpool plays. And so now I'm just kind of developing my own voice as it comes to getting it out to everybody else. But I love the team. And again, glad to see us. I think, what do we have? We have Cardiff next, Cardiff City. So we have Cardiff City next in the fourth round. And that's actually been scrolling around on the bottom here. And so I'm going to end this video. I appreciate you for watching. I'm going to end this video. Let me know what you thought below about the game. If you thought that the score line and the stats kind of favored us a little bit too much. And, if you're a Shrews fan and you see this, I don't think there's any reason for you to hang your head. I think you came to Anfield. I think, while you played some academy players, I think you should be proud that, we did have to bring on some of the seniors to kind of, put the nail in it, so to speak. And if you're interested in tuning in, please take a look over at the next video that will be coming out, because we're going to go over the player ratings and we're going to award a man of the match. Anyway, thanks everybody, and take care.